helicopter flies to the Scillys from Land's End. Over 100 sturdy pinnacles of granite make up the group, with St Mary's the largest. That's where most of the 2,000 inhabitants are. The rest live on 4 outlying islands. Hugh-town on St Mary's is at the heart of things, where it all happens. It houses the council offices, the banks, the shops, and drives the island's major business, the tourist trade. Here, in the main artery of Hugh-town, most of that vital business is done. Presiding over the town is South Western Electricity's generating station, which has 7 diesel generators powered by fuel shipped over from Penzance. Until 1985, it supplied electricity only to St Mary's. Then, submarine cables were laid to the outer islands, and the Cylonians out there switched off their own expensive-to-run generators and switched on to Sweb. But with electricity prices on the Scillys higher than the rest of the southwest because of higher fuel costs, the islanders pressed for mainland tariffs. Sweb agreed and decided to put the local generators into reserve and run a 33,000-volt cable link from the mainland. The link begins at St Marion, a few miles inland from Land's End. Here, the existing substation had to be enlarged, and 2 new 33,000-volt bays were installed by Sweb's Cornwall staff to improve security at St Marion and control the circuit to the Scillys. The operation of the substation is monitored by Sweb control room engineers using computer-controlled links. Here, they keep a round-the-clock watch on the entire distribution network for the area to make sure customers receive a top-quality supply throughout the day and night. And that includes the Isles of Scilly, now linked up to the mainland network. The provision of that link was entrusted to Pirelli General, the British member of the international Pirelli group, world leaders in the cable-making business. Their task was to produce 60 kilometres of 33,000-volt submarine cable to carry the power from the mainland to the Scillys. The manufacture of the cable, the longest of its kind to be laid in the United Kingdom, began at the company's power division at Eastleigh in Hampshire. Here, individual copper wires are stranded together to form the 3 70-square-millimetre conductors that will go to make up the Isles of Scilly cable. Each conductor is subjected to a triple extrusion process where it's screened, insulated and vulcanized in one operation. First, the conductor screen is applied to reduce unwanted electrical discharges. Then, the water-resistant ethylene-propylene rubber insulation, specially developed by Pirelli for use in the manufacture of submarine cables, is extruded around the conductor. Finally, the insulated core passes through a long catenary tube where it's vulcanized at very high temperatures. A metallic screen of tin copper tape is then applied to the conductor. This is very important as it controls any stress which may occur within the insulation. The conductor is now ready, and so begins the task of constructing the cable itself. The 3 cores are laid up along with polypropylene fillers on the massive laying up machine. The core and fillers are twisted together to form the cable. A layer of polypropylene tape is then applied to hold the construction in shape. A temporary protective tape completes the operation before the cable is loaded onto a large road transporter. Then It's ready for the 7-mile journey to Southampton, where the final stages of manufacture are to be completed. Careful advanced planning and cooperation with the police make sure that traffic disruption on this busy stretch of road is kept to a minimum. And soon the load reaches the Pirelli factory. Further along the coast in Kent, the vessel Star Hercules is berthing at Chatham Dock. She's a North Sea supply vessel chartered by Balfour Kilpatrick Limited to lay the submarine cable between Land's End and the Isles of Scilly. Before she arrives, a huge array of metalwork has been made on the quayside in just 16 days, including 12-metre high cable handling equipment and 2 giant storage tanks for holding the 1,200 tons of cable. Painstakingly and skillfully, the structure is put in place on board the Star Hercules to make a series of goalpost fixtures on which the specialised gear for the cable installation will be fixed. All of this work has one purpose: to enable the cable laying operation to be as smooth and professional as possible. And that's why SWEB selected Balfour Kilpatrick, because of their long experience of this kind of work, their high reputation, and a very successful cable laying operation in the Scillies 3 years earlier. Under their guidance, the Star Hercules will be transformed into the perfect vessel for the job. Far to the west, down in Cornwall, SWEB is constructing an entirely new power line ready to link St Berrien substation with the submarine cable coming into the bay near Sennon. A mechanical digger pushes each pole up in turn, fitting it snugly into a 6-foot hole specially shaped to give greater stability. It's work that takes several weeks to complete, and as each pole goes up, it's checked to make sure it's vertical, and then it's checked again to see that it's level and in line with the other poles.
You can hang up now, and after we've hung up, you pull back and cut the conductors. Over.
Now, SWEB's Cornwall linesmen are stringing up the conductors to carry the power, and with their climbers on, they go up each pole in turn to prepare it for the stringing operation. With the wire fixed to an insulator at one end, the winch is started up to take the strain and to do the heavy work. First, a pilot rope is pulled through, then the conductor itself, which is attached to the rope, follows on and passes along the line. Finally, the tension and the sag in the wire are checked to make sure the whole length of the line is properly balanced and able to stand up to the stormy weather conditions which often affect this part of the country. Meanwhile, at Pirelli General's cable factory in Southampton, the final stage in the manufacturing process is underway. The cable has been unloaded from the transporter onto one of the factory's turntables, from where it's now being armoured. The cable is covered with a layer of string bedding before the rotating carriage of the armouring machine wraps a protective layer of galvanised steel wire around it. At each end of the cable, further protection against fishing activities and rock abrasion is provided by a second layer of armour. A final check on the shape of the cable, and then, as a further protection against possible corrosion, the armour is covered with bitumen. The last layer of all is the serving, polypropylene string which is wound on top of the bitumen. Almost 60 kilometres of cable are made by Pirelli, and they weigh over 1,200 tons. It's a triumph of professionalism and skill, owing much to Pirelli's long experience in this very specialised field. By now, the Star Hercules has arrived in Southampton docks from Chatham, fitted out exactly as designed by the Balfour Kilpatrick project team. The next task is to load the massive cable from Pirelli's coiling pad into the twin storage tanks on board ship. This manoeuvre is carefully controlled by a rotating loading arm which directs the cable as it travels via a high gantry to the waiting ship. The route from the factory to the Star Hercules via the gantry takes the cable across one of the city's main roads, as well as several business premises. Equally skillful is the loading of the cable on board the Star Hercules. A caterpillar drive mechanism delivers the cable at a measured pace onto the vessel. From there, power-driven wheels fitted to the quadrants feed the cable down through a rotating loading arm which is used to place the cable in a neat coil in each of the storage tanks, ensuring that the cable will unwind smoothly during the main lay. A generous grant provided by the European Regional Development Fund covered half the total cost of the scheme, including a new transformer for Swebb's generating station brought over by landing craft from Penzance. The 33,000-volt supply will terminate at the transformer, where it'll be converted to 11,000 volts, ready for distribution around the islands. As well as the transformer, a 33,000-volt switch and new cooling tanks will be installed, and inside, space has been found for a new 11,000-volt switchboard. This is a complicated 13-panel board which is fed from the mainland and all 7 diesel generators and controls the circuits which supply the islands with their electricity. The work of transferring all these circuits from the old switchboard is carried out by Swebb staff from the Cornish mainland and local power station men. And the difficult operation is going exactly according to plan. The route for the submarine cable was decided after a hydrographic survey of the area. It avoids important fishing grounds off Land's End and also the rockiest parts of the seabed. The cable-laying operation begins at Sennon, where some 500 metres off the beach, the Star Hercules is carefully stationed. She's equipped with bow and stern thrusters, which enable the Balfour Kilpatrick team to hold her on station in exactly the right position, without the need for moorings, a vital requirement for laying the cable accurately. The ship has already carried out a number of dummy runs over the route to check timings, the set of the tides and the tidal currents. So now it's just a matter of waiting for the weather and other conditions to be favourable. First, a messenger wire is run ashore. It's coupled to the submarine cable using a swivel and long stocking which grips the cable tightly. Then, with a moderate swell running and a rising tide, conditions are just right to bring the cable ashore. Slowly, the cable's pulled out of the aft tank and over the stern with barrels attached to give it buoyancy. Approximately every 2 metres, inflated rubber tubes are fastened to the cable to stop it sinking to the seabed. Slowly, the great snake of the cable eases itself away from the vessel, towards the land. It's an operation that takes several hours to complete because of the care needed to bring the cable to land at exactly the right point. At last, the lead end of the cable makes its way slowly through the breakers and onto the beach. The heavy work of hauling it ashore is carried out by a mechanical digger, which, because of the narrowness of the beach, has to make several runs across it, its speed synchronized with the paying out operation on board ship. Then a team of local divers from Falmouth move into the surf. Quickly, they remove the barrels from the leading end of the cable so that it can be hauled up the beach on rollers. The digger is used to pull it further up the beach where it's secured. Then the cable settles onto the seabed as the divers remove the tubes. Now the cable is ready for the main lay, and to ensure it's carried out to plan, a computerized navigation system will steer the vessel over the selected route by reference to navigation beacons placed strategically at various positions around the adjacent coast. As the ship moves over the route, at between 1 and 2 knots, the payout tension of the cable is carefully monitored and controlled by a series of brakes. The operation is all carried out under the watchful eye of the Balfour Kilpatrick team. The cable laying goes smoothly and successfully, and several hours later the Star Hercules is in position off the Scillies, ready for the final part of this expertly done cable installation. All that remains now is the relatively straightforward operation of bringing the cable ashore onto the beach at St. Mary's. Final plots are taken, computer screens are checked, and the position of the ship relative to the shore verified once more before the team of 30 people on board take a last look for the night at St. Mary's generating station. It had been planned that the end of the cable would be pulled ashore next day. However, a forecast of impending gale-force winds now threatens to disrupt the last stage of the operation. A decision is taken to land the cable during the night, and the operation is performed successfully. On the other side of the water, near Sennon, another difficult operation is in progress. 3 700-metre-long single-core cables are being run down from the top of the steep cliff to link up with the submarine cable on the foreshore. These are made to the same design as the submarine cable cores, but separating them into 3 makes them easier to handle over this difficult terrain. On the beach, a strange tent-like structure has appeared. This is where the all-important joint linking the land and sea cables is to be made. First, the submarine cable is cut to length, and cutting through that steel wire armour is no easy task.
Great.
With the cable the exact length required and the excess towed off out of the way, the sweb jointer and his mate peel the armouring and the screening off the 3 cores, stripping them back to the insulation, ready for the joints to be made. A watchful eye is kept on things by a man from Pirelli. To make sure the land cables can easily be identified later, each phase is colour-coded as it's placed in a spreader for the next stage. Again, the cables are stripped back in the same way as the submarine cable has been. The 2 sets of naked cable are laid alongside one another and bound together to make sure there's plenty of spare to make the joint properly. A final check on the drawing, and the all-important cut through the cables is made. If this is wrong, there's no going back. But it's a perfect cut, and on they go to remove the insulation on both sets of cables to expose the copper cores themselves. The actual joint is made by a ferrule attached to both cores. Then To ensure a sound electrical connection, it's crimped down firmly and the joint packed with solder. By the time they've finished their work, it's dusk, but the joint is made and the entire cable link is ready for final testing. In March 1989, Mainland electricity reached the Scillys. It was achieved through meticulous planning down to the last detail, technical skill of the highest order, and above all, close cooperation between three companies which have a single common purpose: to get it right. And get it right they certainly did.